Awesome.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
And with that, I know it's not really baseball's best mate, but I just love the song, and I played it last week. I almost canned it, Paulie, but I decided, you know what? I'm gonna keep playing the
It,
song because
it
it just has a
does.
ring to it
It
despite
does.
all that. So I kept playing it. Here he is, Paul Morgan. I'm Dan Vaughn. We're baseball's best mate. First off, I missed you
Yes.
last week. Haven't seen you in a
Got
while.
the
You got
beard
the
for
beard
now. I think.
going.
Yeah.
You're
I
looking
think I'm gonna
good,
trim
mate.
the
Looking
beard though.
good.
Like it's a bit grey, so like sometimes I look at myself and go, "Damn, are you getting on in years?" And then I think of this show, and I think, what was it? I think we started this show before I haven't had kiddos, and now my daughter's in high school, so the years have ticked by. It's So life's moved
Crazy.
on, life keeps going,
14
but
years, yeah.
we're still going, and yeah, and it'll be interesting. Look, I mean, for the sake of time, a lot easier, obviously, to only have four teams to talk about, but as opposed to eight. But yeah, and it's interesting this week, DV. Of course, the script is flipped, where the home team becomes the away team in both scenarios, and we shall see what transpires.
Yeah, and you kind of hit what I wanted to even start with was that yeah, we could talk all day and night about ifs, ands, and buts and where teams went and the situation. We'll save that for down the road when we start kind of doing report cards as the season wears along. But I said last week, take all that aside, shove it aside. The fact that we're doing baseball, I think, is good. Uh, are there issues? Absolutely. There's a lot of issues. There are a lot of things that we got to get to as a game, as a group of people, as a group that supports the league,
Mm.
the ABL, Baseball Australia. Everybody has a lot. We have a lot of work to do. Let's shove that aside for the time being, and let's just go forward. And you're right; it makes it easy this week because you just flip the script. Everybody goes, "Okay, I'll be at your place
Yeah.
next week. You're at my place last week." It's pretty simple. It's very, very, very Texas high school basketball district. Is you just flip, go see you next week at
Yeah.
your place. Your thoughts? You were in the booth with Perth last week against Adelaide. Um, you're just knee jerks from the weekend. It was there in the West.
Yeah, I think it was twofold. I think there probably still is a little confusion, in Perth, because obviously there was a time where, the Heat were not going to participate in the league, and then there was a change of ownership and participating. So look, crowds were thin, and I think they were the thinnest I'd seen them for a long time, and I think that's something that there's probably a little education piece, and just a reminder to sort of the people in Perth, just to sort of come out and support the Heat, and we need to kind of from a broadcast point of view, and also from a crowd point of view. I know that the crowds will grow as the season goes on, but it was yeah, I think it'd be good just to get a lot of people out there, and my knee jerk really was, like, it was interesting. We had two bad injuries from a Perth point of view, and we had some things that you don't normally sort of see. Haven't seen a lot of injuries over the year. To have two in the same series from a Perth point of view, obviously TK and Ryan Cermak as well. Cermak's done now for the season. I believe he's already back in the States, as part of the Tampa Bay Rays organization. TK will miss a few weeks. And then on top of that, we saw Van Steensel, uncharacteristically Van Steensel, and Jack O'Loughlin sort of, get knocked around a little as well. Like we saw, Adelaide game one. It was a shock, that 13-0. We thought that'd be pretty close. We had Jack Partington, a position player, pitch for them. It was for the Giants. But yeah, it was sort of it was a strange kind of a series, And I think now you look at Perth going over to Adelaide. Adelaide, I felt, it was interesting. I was sort of chatting to a few people off air around Adelaide. First two games, they just didn't really look cohesive, didn't really look like they were on the same sort of page. I think they sort of had a bit of a kangaroo court style conversation Friday night after their loss, and just sort of, they got themselves on the same page. And they were a very different looking team on Saturday, in terms of there was a lot more smiles on the infield. There was a lot more kind of high fives. There was a lot more chatter amongst in the dugout. There was a lot more sort of chatter amongst, the Giants players. And yeah, look, I think they'll be really good this season. I think that they'll have a good year. I think Perth, now have to kind of navigate situations that we haven't seen too often. DV, we're looking now around. Who's going to? I mean, you're not just replacing. There's not a Ryan Cermak and a Tim Kennelly that you just pull off the shelf and plug back in. I mean, there's not. Cermak, I think, was hitting 1,000 up until the two at bats that he had. But by the time he got injured, and TK was looking as well, great as well. So from a Perth point of view, their pitching held up. Like, there was a question mark before the start of the year that was probably their weak point. Their pitching held up, but yeah, you just sort of, it's like it's a little for Perry Roth. It's a little worrisome, DV, because when you've got a power bat and a captain, like, they don't grow on trees.
And you know what reminded me a little bit, and I'm going to take you back. Oh gosh, it would have been pre-COVID, so it was 18-19 season when it's in reverse because
Yeah,
the Rays had sent that was the year that had Jack Fraley was
yeah,
there and Brosseau and all, and remember the injury happened in Canberra at the end of the
yeah,
year, similar situation, they got banged up. It kind of flipped the script a little bit at
yeah,
the beginning of the year, but yeah, you don't replace those kind of players. You got to somehow find them within. I mean, you just don't. Let's just face it. TK is greatest of all time in the ABL. They don't just walk in the door and say, "Okay, I'm the next TK." You've got
no,
to do that over a number of years.
yeah,
And a prospect, you're going to have to find that. That's going to come from within. Uh, I you know I guess my takeaway watching from a distance, I was impressed. I love the little things like the
mm,
young guys. I love to see, Jay Hewitt, for
yeah,
example. I love to see his 3 innings of work. It wasn't just one sample size, it was 2 appearances. And I love to see that because if there's anything that, you and I always champion over the years of the deep pond of talent in the West, just seeing him.
yeah,
I know it's a small thing. It was only 3 innings, but to me, that was big. The other thing I would say, and I'm with you on the knee jerk side of things, the crowd, I'm not there, obviously. I'm 10,000 miles away, but it was clearly evident that it was not a big deal. And we've seen things start slow out there before, but from a standpoint in the West, they've had slow crowds early, but that one
yeah,
was a little worrisome. And I worry. That was sort of my thing. It was a weird series too because I sort of felt like the stars would be stars. It sort of felt like we had a
mm,
lot of name tags being worn about, oh, this is
yeah,
the guy that's
yeah,
going to be watching, and that's a new guy. And when you have, I believe there was something like, I think overall league wide there was something like
yeah,
17 new, 16 young Australians that played anyway. So there's a lot of name tags being worn. By the way, Chris says, is anyone watching the ABL? Again, we can debate all we want to, and I'm gonna save all that because there's a lot going
yeah,
on there. You and I talked about it a little bit. There's a lot going on there. I'm gonna save all that for a
yeah,
couple of weeks. I want to see what happens. There's a lot of things we've got to sort out right now. I'm gonna try to focus for the next 2 weeks on the games, and then
mm,
I'll worry about that stuff after Thanksgiving in the States because that's when I'll start to worry. There's a lot of things to worry about. There's a lot, and we're gonna probably we're gonna Dr. Vaughn's gonna diagnose the problems and the cures because there's a lot of cures out there, and they're not that hard. But I'm gonna get to that later.
yeah,
But yeah, that was my takeaway from that series there. Uh, Let me ask you this. I mentioned this last week. It reminds me, the A always is a sprint, right? It's always a sprint because you only play the 40 games. It reminds me of the American Association of the last month, where you play all your division bunkmates. Every game matters because now you can make up ground playing your
yeah,
division. You're trying to pass this guy. You're trying, you've got all that, but now it's like a division. You've got 4 teams. It is like the last. It's a sprint, and it's not really the way baseball is
yeah,
designed. Um, I think every game is just that more important now than it usually is, even in a short season like we've had before.
Spot on, and that's what sort of I think round one, and we've known historically. I mean, round one is up for grabs, I think, for anyone, and I think that was those first two games that Perth grabbed, and also Sydney on the other hand, Sydney obviously grabbing that that game one when they won 8-1 and then 18-5. I mean, I think those two wins and I talked about that on the broadcast a little bit. The first two games matter when you get to game 39 and 40 of the season. I mean, right now we look at it and you kind of go, whatever. But to your point, Dan, there's only 40 games. I mean, they're a tenth of the way through the season already. I mean, there's only 10 rounds, and there's actually I think there's only 39 games this year. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
per
So
game, yeah,
so it's
yeah.
so it's it is a sprint, and everything's yeah. And I think like even to like there's a lot of things, and to your point, like, when we talk about the league and there's a lot of change. I mean, like obviously, from a broadcast point of view, that's behind a paywall. From a game point, I mean, I don't recall the time that the two teams have. I mean, I'm sure there has, but I can't remember in a four-team league, obviously, like where everyone, be it four teams or eight teams, I can't remember a time that we had back-to-back series where the team played a home series and an away series week on, week off, which look, sort of makes sense early, but that there's even scheduling things. I still can't quite understand how Perth go to Adelaide three times, Adelaide only come to Perth once. I mean, there's little nuances that don't make a lot of sense, but like at the same time, I think but I think I've sort of I think while there's some people like I think ultimately, whatever camp you sit in, you've got to sit in the camp of, as you said at the top of the show, you've got to sit in the camp that it's great that it's baseball. And is it perfect? No, I don't think anyone would suggest it's perfect. But there is a Claxton Shield up for grabs, and we've got to hope that there is a way that it grows, and we get back to the eight teams or whatever it may will be. But yeah, then and to your point, the name tags as well. Like, yeah, there's also interesting this year from an Adelaide point of view. Four guys from the Tokyo Giants, which is great to see Tokyo come in, and so there's lots of good things, and I think we kind of have to, yeah. And Dr. Vaughan needs to do the job of cutting through the weeds and maybe sort of maybe some things aren't as big a deal as other things, and maybe there are other things that are a bigger deal than they're not. But I'll be interested for your diagnosis, Doc. So,
We'll get there. We'll get there here on Baseball's Best Mate. Dan Vaughn and Paul Morgan with you out way, way east in the home run hitters park there in Brisbane. I wasn't really surprised. I mean, I've talked about over the years. I'd be excited about playing in that ballpark with a little short poke and left and how the ball carries. Sydney, and I talked about this a little bit last week. They see Adelaide on paper seemed like to me in my preview that they were the team because they had all the names that I recognize, but Sydney had a lot of the same names plus a couple additions. They were the more because they were so steer out of the gate. You're that series there. I mean, Brisbane, Brisbane with
yeah,
four teams, everybody's got a really unique story. But I your thoughts on that series? I'm kind of talking in
yeah.
circles there, but I mean, it looks like
Well,
Sydney enjoyed their time in Brisbane
yeah,
offensively.
and I was probably. I mean, I thought going into the season, I thought Brisbane would probably be, pretty unbeatable at home. But then, yeah, and then game two, DV, I think was the bizarre one. It was game two where I think the Sydney Blue Sox were up 7-0 before an out was
Yeah,
recorded, and I don't know, like I mean, and you've watched a lot more games than I have. I mean, but I've watched enough to know, like, if a team is behind 11-0 before you've even picked up the sticks to have a swing, I'm not sure what like it's not good for business. And I think that's a game and a
no,
7 inning game
no.
that you almost have to raise the white flag at that point and go, well, we have to preserve something for the next go around.
It's funny because you say that. I was doing an interview today with a kid named Ben Dete, Iowa Hawkeye. He was on our show in Sioux City today. Our show, by the way, it's called Explorers Expresso. It's up online right now. But anyway, talking, and I was having flashbacks because that actually happened in a playoff game last year where Sioux City gave up like, in the third inning gave up like 8 runs, and that was the game. I mean, you're okay.
Mm.
We're going to play for a deciding game three. And there are games like that, and it gets crazy. The one more thing I would say too that I thought about when you were answering that question was that yeah, the four teams and you do play back to back. The one thing that happens a lot during the association season is that you do wind up playing in August. You'll see Winnipeg for 6 games in a row.
Yeah.
You'll see for example, Sioux Falls last year. Sioux City saw Sioux Falls 6 out of 8 games.
Yeah.
And it can be a little dicey. That there's familiarity. That's the fun part. You're familiar, but the negative thing sometimes you get a little bit of both. That I throw that in there, but yeah, I'm I think I kind of jumped the gun last week in my preview. I really thought there was some solid answers, but because all the name tags and all the youngsters, we're going to see this thing go down. And this is the fun part about it, I guess. To a degree, you're going to see this thing go to the final week of the season. It seems like, because I don't think there's really a lot of separation right now. Although with the injuries, that could happen and separate things out. But that's just my
Mm.
take on it. What did you think about? And we haven't really talked about this because Jim Bennett was named manager of those Brizzies when we were in dry dock. But I find the managing situation with that series, two guys that have been really they've contributed. They're both
Yeah.
Americans, but they've contributed to the Australian game. They get the Australian game. Brooke Knight being in Sydney, both have deep roots in Australia. While they may be in America a lot, they get the Australian game, and I'm really impressed that those two names are still in the league, and I think that's very big for our league having those two guys
Oh
in
yeah,
that series.
yeah. And Jim Bennett, of course, reigning champion manager with the Canberra Cavalry. Of course, like he did the job there. Then yeah, great manager to have for Brisbane, and Brooke Knight as well. Fantastic. And I think even on that, DV, it's something we talked about a little bit last week, but. You have a look at historically who what was great for the game is yeah, we talk about players a lot, but how about Blake Butera and also Craig Albanese, two guys through the systems who spent some time as bench coaches with the Heat, and obviously now they've got their opportunity to manage their respective side in the Orioles and the Nationals, and that's a great story as well. I mean, I think they're the sort of they're the small parts of these things. So so guys like. Brooke Knight, who's so highly regarded, as is Jim Bennett. Mix in Chris Adamson, who's of course doing some great things with the Phillies and bringing some good prospects down, and then Perry Roth, who's obviously part of that Rays organization as well. It's an interesting sort of from the managerial point of view,
Sure.
but yeah, you sort of just you think there's a couple of wise heads there though, isn't there? In Brook Knight and Jim Bennett.
They are, and it's crazy. You think about Craig Alvarez too. I'm thinking that's a guy sat next to the plane, going through game notes and stats with, and giving him those.
Yeah,
And I remember one trip, his wife, and at that time, the youngest was about only one they had sitting behind me. I got to know them, and now he's in the big leagues of Baltimore. It's so cool.
yeah,
Messaged him and said, "Hey, congratulations." I mean, he's got bigger fish to fry but he's a really first class guy. But again, those are things that I think we've got to embrace as a league, as a code.
yep,
We got to embrace those storylines because that's a connection right there. Here on Baseball's Best
yep.
Mate. Well, we flip locations here. Did we learn a lot last weekend? Do you think anything? Do you think the home team has an advantage in that Perth series in Adelaide? And do you
Well,
think that
the
Sydney
the
would revert back to form at home and watch
the
Brisbane take a road series?
I look, I think Adelaide have a huge advantage just injury wise, and I think just roster wise, I think like Perth are sort of thin. I think they're the thinnest I've ever seen them in terms of depth. But saying that, Perth played that ballpark so well last year. I mean, that was them, and of course last year they were they were better on the road than they were home. So, and there's magic in the water at the greatness of the Aqaba, as you know, DV. So they'll get over there to the great the Aqaba Hotel there in Adelaide, which there's greatness run through those pipes
Yeah,
there at the
great.
Aqaba.
Great
But
greatness there. That IGA across the way has
yeah,
great
yeah,
snacks too. That's a great
yeah.
location. I love the
But
Aqaba. That's great.
But yeah, so look, I think Adelaide would have to go into heavy favourites into that series, no doubt, and I think look, Sydney would be really good play. I think like they'd have to take a lot of confidence out of that series in Brisbane, especially the bats. Like as you said, DV, if you're gonna choose yourself to take BP at any ballpark in Australia, it would be the Brisbane one. But having said that, they still put up a ton of runs, and their ballpark of the breezes blowing in, like will they play better? And I think, look, and I will say with Sydney, I think what's so positive about Sydney is probably for a long time. I happen to be in Sydney right now, but like this is obviously the- in a massive market. I mean, it's a massive opportunity for the game, and I love what they're doing. They've got some great videos on social media at the moment. I love what they're doing. Sydney is sort of what we'd say that they're trying at the moment, and like I love what's happening. With the Blue Sox in that regard. Got the new sort of the new uniforms and small things, but they're big, right? And I think that's what's been lacking from Sydney for some time. And I think like there's like yes, it's a bit of a trek out to that ballpark. Yes, it's not downtown, but like I like what they're doing, DV, and I think that's eventually that's going to catch a bit more interest in Sydney, and like as I say, I mean, where I am at, it's a big city, and it's an opportunity that's huge there in Sydney.
Yeah, I would add too, as we talk about, because I'm not going to break down this of the players and that thing, but for Sydney, I think what Black Pearl's done is great. I, I I think it's key that they draw. I want to see them draw well. I want to see them build momentum because again, if
Mm,
we're gonna dig out this hole that I think, yes, we're in a hole. The baseball in Australia is in a bit of a hole right now. We're gonna dig out of it and grow the game like we want to grow the game, like it was 14 years ago when you and I were just starting up at Sport FM there in Perth. I mean, we get there, you're going to need not. It just can't be one city carrying the load. It can't be
yeah,
just whatever you want to, whichever one it is. It's got to be everybody. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And I am cheering for them to really take off out there. It's a great facility. It's historic, an Olympic facility. There's been with some medal games there. I'm pulling for them in the stands at the gate. I hope it translates to the field too. But I really want to see them be consistently putting butts in seats. Yeah, it's a long trek, but they got to
yeah,
that would be a huge deal if we're going to try to overcome what we're at. Because we were in a good place, right? Not necessarily, but we could be. Hey, Harold, good to
yeah,
see you out there, mate. Uh, but to get there, Sydney has got. I mean, we know. We know that Perth's been great crowd wise. We saw some great crowds the last couple of years of the postseason. They've been great. We know Melbourne when the Aces are doing the Aces thing. That's a great atmosphere. Canberra, the long departed Canberra, what a crowd those places. Adelaide, Brisbane, all those are great crowds. Sydney's been the one we've always been concerned about. If we can get them off the ground, and that's what I'm looking forward to watching. I'm looking forward and I'm going to be watching more or less not so much the balls and strikes, which I will, but I want to see what song are they playing? What's the
yeah.
atmosphere like? What's it like on Saturday there? That's what I'm
And
looking forward to seeing because I really want to see those guys. And I'm
the
cheering
the
for them.
only potential downside I see is as I mentioned, I'm in Sydney at the moment. Is very grey outside. It's very grey. There's supposed to be some weather.
Oh no,
Supposed to be some rain tomorrow. I'm actually yeah. So there's supposed to be some rain tonight. So hopefully maybe they missed that. But I'm just sort of looking at the weather chart now, and it does not look like an amazing weekend weather-wise here in Sydney. So um, yeah, hopefully they don't have bad weather, but I think there's going to be some. Not sure those games are going to go overly smoothly. DV, just looking at the radar, it looks like there's rain coming,
well
and
maybe like that year we were out there, they rain delayed for like 9 hours
yeah,
and we
when
finally
they
didn't play.
finally,
We maybe
finally
like
bang
that,
the
and then
game.
the next
I still think of that
And then we
often.
finally played the next day at like
Yeah,
that day. That was the day game on a Sunday
yeah,
where we had to play a day game early, and a doubleheader was like 9,000 degrees out there. I mean, it
yeah,
was brutal. We were
yeah.
sitting on
It
top of
was.
that dugout, just. Oh,
That was
I think
one
the
of the
laptop caught on fire.
yeah, that was one of the pull the curtain back. We had that was the longest, and it was an obvious. And there's nothing worse than when it's obvious that you're not playing baseball. It was pouring in the rain. We sat there for seemed like 5 hours. It was friends and family only towards the end, and then the next day it was about 45 degrees, and we were sitting in the blazing sun. But yeah, anyway, that
Oh,
was
that was
good.
brutal, but,
Yeah,
that was the
memories.
good old days.
The good old
Baseball's
days,
best mate.
TV.
Dan Vaughn, Paul
But
Moore with you here. Let's close things out because the beautiful part about these shows are a little bit short. They'll be a little shorter now because we don't have but the four teams. Uh, you've already kind of said it. I think you're right. I think Perth weekend is up against it because of the injuries,
yeah,
more importantly. But obviously, the idea is to split the road and win a home series. They won the home series. Their goal is to split the road. I don't know. I mean, Adelaide definitely is got the advantage. I think they win that
mm,
series. Uh,
yeah,
I think Sydney wins the series against Brisbane as
yeah.
well.
I
I
do
mean,
too.
just again on paper, I like that team. They have some intriguing pieces. I talked a little bit about that last week. A couple of older guys that they've imported as well. Uh, I just knee jerking there. I would also say, that sort of the hometown vibes. They have a really feel good feeling about them right now.
Yeah,
I like what Josh Bishop did as well. Um, I thought, you know, I think we're to see more from Kai Jackson. A couple of names that we talked about last week, but again, that's what I take. It'll be interesting to see, and I don't think we'll know much for another 2 weeks to really see much separation. I mean, that's sort of what I'm thinking.
yeah. No, I agree, and I think it'll be a tough weekend for the Heat. But these are the ones that you mentioned at the top of the show, someone like a Jai Hewitt who came out and was really good over 3 innings, and you just got to get hot and get rolling. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Adelaide win that series, and I'm with you. I think Sydney get it as well, and yeah, I think starts putting a big deposit on the season.
There you go. Well, when you only have 4 teams,
It
it makes it
does,
pretty
it does,
easy.
and I've got
But
to run to a
all
meeting.
good.
But
Well, yeah, yeah. Head to your meeting there in Sydney, and I'm going to head
yeah,
to dinner
yeah,
here in
perfect.
Dallas. And appreciate you, mate. I'll let you
Thanks,
go.
Phil. See you later.
There he is, folks. There he is, Paul Morgan, right there, looking good in Sydney. Dan Vaughn with you. We close things out again. Now, if you're watching this and if you're listening to the podcast, glad you do. I'm glad you do it. Bookmark our page, bookmark it wherever you get your podcast. You'll see that up as well. A big thanks to Paul Morgan. A big thanks to you guys. Now, again, the next couple of weeks, I want to see this thing sort of get off the ground because that's my biggest concern right now. Now, I have very deep, deep concerns about the great game of baseball. Very deep concerns. A lot of them can't be answered now. I want to see some of the early there's always early things in a season. I mean, I can tell you from the American Association, we had a dual stream thing last year. It took some growing pains for a few days, right? A couple weeks to kind of get our sea legs. It finally get your sea legs, and I think I'm going to reserve judgment for at least one more week, and then maybe one more to kind of see. But there's the microscope of what we got to do now, but the big picture is what we got to do long haul. And the long haul where you can help big picture wise is support your local team. If you're in Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, wherever you are, support your local team. Tip of the cap to Eric Balinar. I think he's done a really good job of getting out as many storylines as he can get out to the media. One in particularly is Ethan Bickel. Youngster is got signed a letter of intent to go to North Central College, a place not far from where I'm at in Gainesville, Texas, a really good junior college here in the States. You're seeing these young Australians, and I love the fact that the league is pushing the youngsters. There was like 16 youngsters that were. I can go through that list real quickly as I close things out. Here were your list of guys, and this was you had Sean Maple, Cooper Morgan in Adelaide, James McFarland, Liam Scott, AJ Verastugwe. How you say that? The man from Venezuela but raised in Australia. Luke Kravosky, Jackson Grounds in Brisbane, Liam McDonald. I really like what we saw from him. Had a grand slam in his ABL debut. Christian Hausler, Ben Nesbitt in Perth. You got Bishop, Jackson, and Natty there in Sydney. Those are all young names, and those are all guys, again, if you don't follow the league and you're away for a while, those are all name tags. You're going to need them. Plus, you got the imports. Get out there, read the coverage, follow your team, do the best you can. I'm not asking anybody to dive in and spend the big bucks, but follow, whatever. Do what you got to do at the grassroots level. Let's try to, we got to bottom out somewhere. Maybe this is where we rebound right now. That's where I look at. I look at it more or less without trying to give you the inside how to improve things. I look at it, and my dad used to say you got to hit rock bottom sometimes. Maybe this is our rock bottom, perhaps. We bottom out at the bottom. We're going to bounce back up again with 4 teams that are fired up, 4 teams that are exciting, 4 really good managers. And I think the only way to go is forward. And we'll discuss more of the things we got to do on the macro level as we also discuss the micro level here on Baseball's Best Bet. Thanks to Paul Morgan. Thanks to you guys that stopped by. 5 minutes the entire time. We'll continue to ramp up our coverage. We'll have more for you. We'll experiment with some things here and there as well. Why not, right? We're all experimenting to get the game and get it kick-started, so we'll do the same thing here on Baseball's Best Bet. 14 years and rolling. It's been a while here. 14 years and rolling. All right, let's be better fans tomorrow or today. Let's show more love tomorrow or today going forward in 2025, 26. Until next time, enjoy the ball games, and we'll see you next time, everybody. Play the close, Vaughn. Play the close.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care.